Good Tuesday afternoon, everyone. My name is The Phoenix, and thank you guys for joining me live from Twitch or YouTube, wherever you choose to download your streaming content. I am a little late today to get on track with my streaming. I did forget to set my alarm last night when I went to bed. I don't usually forget to, but last night I forgot to, and I slept in until 10 a.m. and my baby slept until almost 11, which is just absolutely wild. So I guess we decided to sleep in for this Tuesday. So instead of streaming my longer content or my longer stream, we are choosing to stream during one of his nap times. So it is very likely that this will not be a very long stream today, but thankfully we don't have a whole lot of stuff left in our in this section of the chapter to get through. So right now we have the latest release from Free League Publishing, Keepers of the Elven-Rings. This is for Dungeons and Dragons 5e, but is a variation, a subsystem of D&D 5e. So this is Lord of the Rings Roleplaying for 5th edition by Free League Publishing. And Keepers of the Elven-Rings is the latest book that is available right now for pre-order. If you pre-order from Free League Publishing's website, you do get early access to a PDF version of the book before the physical copies of the books are released. You do get the physical copy of the book as well, but you get the PDF, which is fantastic for those of us who want to see the content early, or for those of us who even do online lore mastering or online gaming for our virtual tabletops. So we have covered thus far in our streams. This is part 6 of my coverage of this book. In previous streams, we have covered the appendices, which has our new calling called Elf Lords, as well as 2 new subcultures for elves, Wood Elves and High Elves. So we covered those in a previous stream. We have covered Chapter 1, which goes into the specifics of the locations. Welcome, Mark Songs. Good to see you back. So we've covered Rivendell, Lindon, and Lothlorien in previous streams. And then yesterday, we delved into the first part of our Chapter 2 coverage, which is titled As Days Darken, or The Darkening of Days, something like that. And this covers the different schemes that are happening by the Shadow during this point in the story. So this is more stuff for your lore master to look at rather than you as a player. So big content warning. If you don't want spoilers, please do not spoil it for yourselves. It sounds like I missed a stream in between. Yeah, I streamed yesterday morning. So yesterday we went into the first of 3 plots that you could potentially use as a lore master. So this one is called Perils of the Last Road. So we haven't gone into all of it just yet. I'm intending to finish up the last of this arc for Perils of the Last Road today. I think that we can finish it today. Here's hoping. So just an overview of what we covered for that Perils of the Last Road. So we talked a little bit about, or the beginning of this chapter talked a little bit about the journey elves take to the utmost west. So it talked about the allure of going west, and then a little bit about the elves that choose or maybe delay staying in Middle Earth and delay that journey to the utmost west, to the Undying Lands. And one of the ploys of Sauron, so Sauron sees elves as his greatest enemy in Middle-earth. And so anything he can do to undermine elves or work against elves is, an ace up the sleeve for him. So we talked a little bit about some ways that he's doing this. So there's evil things on the road, whether it is trolls or goblins or orcs. We've got why can't I think of other servants of the Dark Lord? Ruffians and miscreants and bandits and all sorts of evil people on the road who could waylay or injure or even kill elves on their way to Lindon so that they can depart for the Undying Lands. So we talked a little bit about that, and we started going into one creature in particular. So from what I understand, this is a creature that was created specifically for the Free League Publishing book. I don't think that this is or that any of these really are creatures that exist in Tolkien's work. So we went into the history of someone named Moralhaus. So Moralhaus actually used to be a young elf named Nindorn. And Nindorn had a crush on a elf maiden named Pheloth. But Pheloth turned down Nindorn. So that's an important note. Pheloth was not the lover of Nindorn. And Nindorn didn't take the hint and continued to try to impress her. And he tried jumping from a Malorn tree into the Anduin River. But when he did that, so he did this to try and impress Pheloth. But when he did that, he ended up drowning. And the Dark Lord, Nindorn had unfinished business. He was still obsessed over Pheloth. So his spirit was unattached. It couldn't depart into the realm of the dead. Is this in the system or in Tolkien? This is in the system. So from what I understand, these are not characters from Tolkien's work. I believe that these are created specifically for the system here. So So Moralhaus, I won't get into the Moralhaus bit yet. So Nindorn, his spirit wasn't at peace, and so he stayed in Middle-earth. Sauron noticed this and began to contrive a plan. So he captured the spirit of Nindorn and tortured him and subjected him to brainwashing and all sorts of dark torture methods until Nindorn's spirit was corrupted and twisted, and Sauron made him channel that malevolence towards elves and towards creatures that are still living in Middle-earth. And he released Nindorn's spirit as a new servant of Sauron with a new name. He was now called Moralhaus, the Dark Whisper. And Moralhaus is an unhoused spirit. He's basically invisible most of the time. Nindorn, it is, let me type it in the chat for you. Nindorn. He's supposed to be from Lorien. And then the elf maiden that he likes, that he has the crush on, is Pheloth. So both of them are supposed to be from Lorien. And when Moralhaus, so Moralhaus is how you spell the Dark Whisperer. There you go. There's all the names here. So Moralhaus, now released upon Middle-earth, is targeting elves. He's obsessed with, hurting them, killing them, torturing them. But he is, he doesn't have a physical body. So what Sauron did was he gave him a kind of a I guess second in command almost. So Moralhaus was given someone named Zagruk, who is a orc. And Zagruk is called the Voice from Beyond. He's slightly lower CR than Moralhaus is. It is important to note that I did cover the complete overview of the balance of these stat blocks in my previous stream yesterday, including ways to buff up the stat blocks a little bit. Zagruk is the counterpart to Moralhaus in the scene world. And the important thing is, by giving him this, he was also given something called the Mask of Spirits, which allows Zagruk to perform a ritual so that Moralhaus can possess his body. The cool thing is when he possesses his body, so he... Moralhaus, his game statistics are replaced by Zagruk, but he retains his int, wisdom, and charisma scores, his skill proficiencies, and then his 2 actions, which is something called his Spell of Slumber and his Visions of Torment, which is important because those are really the only damaging or more powerful things he can do against the party. So he can't do his, he doesn't have his incorporeal movement, he doesn't have his invisibility, and he doesn't have his deathless nature, but everything else is just Moralhaus plus. Moralhaus enhanced. I need the Spell of Slumber. Hey, Kylie Cleric, it's a DC 14 int save, so depending on where you put your dump stat. No, so Moralhaus basically possesses Zagruk's body and becomes a more powerful stat block. I choose to fail. Yeah. And I actually really like this because when I did the balance of these 2 stat blocks, Moralhaus, to be honest with you, was very underpowered. I think I put his defensive CR at like a CR 1/4. His offensive CR was a little bit higher, but he actually ended up coming out to like a CR 3, I believe it was. And he's supposed to be a CR 5. So it would be like I gave a bit of guidance on how I would adjust the stat block. Basically, the easiest thing to do is do a variant of Heated Body, where when the characters come within like 5 feet of him, have him have like an ever-present, it could be a 1d6 or a 2d6 or something like that, but just have a constant thing for the characters to receive more damage. That's cool 2 forms. Yeah, so when I was reading it, like I was really unimpressed with Moral Haas at first because I was like, you know, he's got some really cool actions, but the damage that he was doing was just not impressive. And then I read about Zagruk and then the Mask of Spirits, and then I was like, oh, that makes sense. Because I think that if you add the two stat blocks together, it does come out as probably closer to CR5. So the cool things about Moral Haas's actions. So the two actions, I know I covered this yesterday, but, you know, there's people here to talk to you about this, so I'll tell you guys about it. So his Spell of Slumber is a recharge 6, so every turn you roll a 1d6, and if you roll a 6, it recharges. So Moral Haas chooses up to 3 creatures he can see within 60 feet of them. They gain 1 shadow point resisted by a DC 14 int save, and if they fail the save, they fall asleep and are unconscious for 1 minute. Like the sleep spell from D&D 5e, they wake up if they take any damage or if another creature takes an action to shake them awake. Elves, wizards, and creatures that don't sleep or have immunity to the exhaustion condition automatically save against this spell. Tonight's D&D game got canceled, but Phoenix is inspiring me to do some more campaign prep world building. Yeah, I'm glad. I'm happy to inspire. But the cool thing, so this is the feature that I really like about Moral Haas's stat block. It's called Visions of Torment. Moral Haas chooses a non-undead creature he can see within 60 feet of him. The target gains 3 shadow points, resisted by a DC 14 charisma saving throw. If the target is unconscious, it has disadvantage on the saving throw. On a fail, the target takes 4d10 psychic damage and is frightened until the end of Moral Haas's next turn. If the fail saves by 5 or more, the target is also stunned while frightened this way. And then on a successful save, the target takes half as much damage, isn't frightened, and is immune to Visions of Torment for the next 24 hours. So the interesting thing about this is when you combine it with Zagruk. So Zagruk has he's a poisony kind of person. So he's got 2 poison attacks. He's got multi-attack, so he does either 2 melee attacks or 1 melee and 1 ranged. Poison Concoction is his range attack that does 1d12 poison damage, and then he's got his melee attack, Poison Knife, which does 1d4 plus 3 slashing plus 1d6 poison. But he's got a Poisoner feat. So a creature that takes poison damage from Zagruk must succeed on a DC 13 con save or be poisoned for 1 hour. While poisoned, the target can't regain hit points and has disadvantage on death saving throws. And if they fail by 5 or more, the target is also unconscious while poisoned this way. And they wake up if they take damage or if another creature takes an action to shake them awake. So you combine the two of them together. Zagruk, if he gets these creatures unconscious with his poison condition, even if people succeed on the spell of slumber from Moral Haas's stat block, if they become unconscious from Zagruk's Poisoner feat, then Moral Haas can target them with that Visions of Torment, which can do a decent amount of damage, but more importantly, it does 3 shadow points of gain to them, and it gives them the frightened condition, and it gives them a potential stun condition. It is, can you repeat the poison condition that lasts for an hour? So a creature that takes poison damage from Zagruk must succeed on a DC 13 con save or be poisoned for 1 hour. While poisoned this way, they can't regain hit points, and they have disadvantage on death saving throws. if they failed that saving throw by 5 or more, so the DC is 13. So if you roll an 8 or below, they are also unconscious while poisoned that way. And they wake up if they take damage or if another creature takes an action to shake it awake. So basically what you do if you have these two together, how often do they take damage? Because 1 hour is a long time in game time. I guess it depends on if you're in combat. So what I would do if I were running this combat. So let's pretend that that Moralhaus and Zagruk are two entities, that they aren't combined yet. What I would do, so Moralhaus has invisibility. So this is really cool about this stat block. He's just invisible. Moralhaus becomes visible for 1 minute on any creature that obtains a magical success on a perception check. So he automatically has advantage on all of his attack rolls, and everyone has disadvantage on attack rolls against him. Unless they obtain that magical success, they're going to be fighting an invisible creature. There's no concentration to break, nothing like that. So what you do is you come in with this guy. He's also got a +6 to stealth. So he could theoretically get a surprise round on the players. You bring him in, he casts his Spell of Slumber, recharge 6, on 3 creatures. Let's pretend that we have a party of 4. One of them is likely going to be an elf, who's immune to this anyway, so we're not going to target the elf. We're going to target the dwarf, the ranger, and the hobbit. Let's say 2 of them fail. Let's say 2 of them fail the DC 14 int save. They gain a shadow point, and they fall unconscious for 1 minute. You have now 2 people down and 2 people up. Then you get Zagruk's turn come around. He's going to go and he's going to make a ranged attack against someone with his poison concoction. They take 1d12 poison damage. And then let's say he runs up to the second creature and he uses his poison knife. Let's pretend he misses. But the other creature makes a DC 13 con save. Thank you for the follow, Sayer Boy. I appreciate it. So let's say that person fails their saving throw against the DC 13 con save. They are now poisoned for an hour. They can't regain hit points. And let's pretend that they roll an 8. They are now unconscious as well. You've got one person engaged in melee. Maybe they disengage, but if they disengage, they can't help their friends. So instead, they take an op attack from Zagruk. Let's say Zagruk gets it off and he poisons them, but maybe they don't fall unconscious. Your friend goes to wake up one of his allies. You still have 2 allies down, and now we start the next round. And now we start, Moralhaus comes in, and he uses his Visions of Torment to target one of your downed unconscious people. And it doesn't matter which one he targets. It could be someone who failed the Spell of Slumber or someone who failed the Poison Con save. Either way, he targets them. They make the DC 14 Charisma save. If they're unconscious, they make it at disadvantage. So now they gain 3 shadow points and take 4d10 psychic damage. And they're stunned and they're frightened. That's a good encounter. I will say, this encounter though, this is supposed to be like a really scary encounter, but a really quick encounter. You do not want this going on for like 10, 15, 20 rounds. it's likely that it wouldn't go that far. Thankfully for the players, they do have really low defensive CRs. Moralhaus is only a AC 13 with 39 hit points, and Zagruk is AC 15 with 52 hit points. The fact that they can wipe out some of the action economy with all of these feats, with all of these actions, does increase their survivability. But it's going to be a rough fight. It's definitely going to be a rough fight. Those are those two creatures. I also did go into, there is a third stat block that I covered yesterday called Vorog the Elf Hunter, who is an orc chieftain renowned among his followers for slaying a massive warg that insulted him during a raid. It says, in a display of brutal strength and skill, Vorog defeated the beast by driving a dagger into its open mouth. So he has an alliance with Zagruk and Moralhaus, and Zagruk has equipped Vorog and his orcs with information regarding elf movements. So Zagruk is kind of like an informant almost, and Vorog is the chunky muscle man who's he's actually got quite a good offensive CR, if I remember correctly. So he's only a CR 3, but he has sneak attack. He has something called horrible strength that lets him do an additional die of damage when he hits with an attack. He's got multi-attack, so he makes 2 melee or 1 melee and 1 ranged. But the interesting thing about this stat block, Vorog's stat block, is he has something called Yell of Triumph, which he can do once per long rest. And each creature of Vorog's choice that is within 30 feet that can hear him gains advantage on attack rolls and intimidation checks until the start of Vorog's next turn. And then Vorog can make 1 attack as a bonus action. So what you do with this stat block is you have all of your orcs, big orc clan, grouped together as close as they can get to their chieftain. And he brings out this Yell of Triumph to give them all advantage on their next attack rolls. And then he comes in and he swings with his bonus action, and that's where you start off your combat. So now all these big orcs have advantage on their attack rolls for the next round of combat. And then what he does, so he's got sneak attack, but he's got his scimitar, so he does 2d6 plus 3 slashing damage with that. He's also got shield bash, which is really cool. So it's 2d4 plus 3 bludgeoning damage, and if the target is medium or smaller, it must succeed on a DC 13 strength save or be knocked prone. So what you do is, you could even do this with his bonus action, really. When he starts at that combat, you come in, you shield bash someone, get them prone, and then everyone will have advantage on the attack anyways. But let's say there's an outlier that was maybe 35 feet away. He comes in and he has advantage against that target who is now prone in melee range for your players. And then on each of his turns, what he's going to do is he's going to shield bash, get you prone, and then make an attack at advantage with his scimitar, which then procs his sneak attack for an extra 2d6 damage. And the nice thing about this stat block is Vorog has parry, which adds a +2 to his AC against 1 melee attack that would hit. So he's more the beefy beefy stat block of these 3 stat blocks that we discussed yesterday. But I think that they have a good synergy with one another, and they really work towards covering one another's weaknesses. So yeah, it's a really cool stat block. So those are the things we covered yesterday. Let's see. Sorry, I need to go back to the chat here. Sorry, your game has been canceled. That sucks. More world building is always good. True, I actually don't mind about the game today. It gives me a chance to catch up on some things, but thanks. Yeah. Sounds like RA to DM this fight. Yeah, no, I would totally. And you know, this that's the nice thing about these little, I keep calling them story beats, but they're really just plot hooks for the DM, potential plot hooks for the DM. It could be, you know, the main overarching story. It could be a subplot, but they really outline a lot of cool stuff in these. But we're going to go into the next little bit of this chapter to cover a couple things about the timeline. So let's actually pop over to this screen. All right. Let me zoom in a little bit for you guys. All right. So we've got a couple more, not so much the big scrolling stat blocks, but we have some a base stat block and then a second NPC, maybe not an NPC so much, evil NPC maybe. So let's go into Arlo Fireblaze. So Arlo is a robber from Minhirieth with a notorious reputation for attacking travelers across Eriador, earning him a bounty in many towns. Obsessed with becoming filthy rich and retiring to the peace of the south as a free man, he believes that only the right victim stands between him and his dream. Recently, Arlo was tricked by Zagruk and Morlhas into believing that he is destined to discover an extraordinary treasure, a golden ring with the ability to duplicate itself each day. Consumed by this belief, he is now determined to find it at any cost. That's so smart. Get the filthy rich, obsessed, evil guy to start looking out for this ring. Arlo Fireblaze, yeah, I think he's probably another NPC that's been designed by Free League Publishing for the story. I don't imagine that this guy exists in the Tolkien universe, the proper Tolkien universe, but we will see. We can do some research afterwards here. So. Arlo is tall and wiry, with creasy ginger hair and a rarely trimmed mustache. His blue eyes burn with a light of greed and cruelty, traits that his men both respect and envy. Arlo and his men are highway robbers. See page 150. Okay, so they gave us a generic stat block for Arlo. But he has a connection to the story and has a connection to Zagruk and Morlhas. If he finds out that these two have tricked him, you know, there's an opportunity to be, you know, enemy of my enemy is my friend. But it sounds like Arlo is probably one of the shadier characters of the story here. Then we have Pheloth. So Pheloth, if you guys remember me recounting, is the love interest that Lindon liked during his life. So Pheloth, a wood elf, was a friend to Lindon during his life. Although she was aware of his affection for her and reciprocated his feelings, she hesitated to commit, sensing a shadow of darkness that lay between them. Oh, she liked him back. Oh, that's actually sadder. Her intuition proved true when Lindon began to express an intensity that made her uneasy. Pheloth chose to step back from the relationship, distancing herself from him. 2 days later, Lindon dived into the Anduin and accidentally met his end. While she mourned him as a friend, a lingering suspicion that she had somehow caused his tragic end haunted her, leading her to withdraw from love and the affections of others thereafter. Since then, she has lived behind the fences of Lorien, the Golden Wood. If made aware of Morlhoss's identity, Pheloth's reaction is likely to be one of utter horror. Her immediate response would be to deny the truth, but if the player heroes are able to calm her, she may decide to attempt to speak to Morlhoss and break the spell that holds him to slavery to Dol Guldur, even if it means a risk to her life. Although she has no love left for him, she believes there must still be some good in his heart as there was before his death, and that in the halls of awaiting he may receive healing and redemption. If, by ill chance, death should come to Pheloth, her spirit immediately flies away to the west. And we've got more of a RP stat block for her. So she's got an int of 14, wisdom of 14, and charisma of 11. She's described as generous and stern. Passive perception of 14, speaks Sindarin and Western. She has a +4 in nature, perception, and a +6 in medicine. She is a healer and herbalist. All right. So, Pheloth is not supposed to be a fighty stat block. They really just give us these skills and these basic attributes, just so that we can basically roll her saving throws or her skill checks, or communicate with the players. Now let's go into the timeline, because there is, this is the really cool meat and potatoes of this. It is worth noting that the date in which we are set in the Lord of the Rings role-playing books is typically going to be 2965 of the Third Age. So 2965 of the Third Age is the date in which most of the players are, or most of the story is taking place. As a lore master, you can set a little before or a little ahead, depending on your ideas. But these kinds of things with the timelines are made with that specific year in mind. So it's supposed to be that we have all this stuff happening up to the date that the players are, and then some stuff that happens afterwards, so that you can watch as the story develops as you play through it. So, Dark Designs of Morlhoss. Sauron sends Morlhoss to infest the routes connecting Lothlorien to Rivendell and the Grey Havens, with a primary focus on the passes across the Misty Mountains. The Dark Lord plays a long game, aware that the downfall of the elves cannot be achieved in the span of a few years. Below are listed some past events, along with potential developments. The lore master can incorporate the player heroes into any of the described episodes, or make them the protagonists of the narrative. For example, traveling player heroes are likely to become targets of the unhoused spirit, especially if the company includes elves. Alright, so in 2850, this is Lindorn's death. Around this time, the wood elf Lindon dies in the Anduin. His spirit is lured to Dol Guldur by the necromancer, where he is tortured and deceived into submission. In the same year, Zagruk begins his training in sorcery under the necromancer's tutelage. In 2941, so nearly 91 years later, Sauron leaves Dol Guldur. The necromancer abandons Dol Guldur and returns to Mordor. Zagruk and the spirits of Lindon hide in the deepest dungeons of the forest. of the fortress. Sorry, not forest. Night 2951 of the Third Age. The Ringwraiths reclaim Dol Guldur. Sauron sends 3 of the Nazgul to reoccupy Dol Guldur. They complete the subjugation of Morlhos and the training of Zagrak. Are there suggestions in the setting for campaigns, or does the setting include some modules or campaigns? Actually, yeah. So this specific book, so Keepers of the Elven-Rings, there is not written. They don't have the exact written information on like a campaign module like you would see in D&D 5e for this specific book. So this is more of a settings book with some locations and potential plot hooks that you could develop into your own campaign. So that's what we're reading right now, is more, this is a potential suggestion that you can incorporate into your campaign. But in other books for Lord of the Rings 5e, we actually do have campaign books. So off the top of my head, there is the Shire Adventures, which is more like a lighthearted set of one-shot adventures. You have, I think it's 5 one-shots in that one, and each one increases in difficulty, but it has like the full, here's how your players are brought together, here's the quest giver, here is what their objective is, and here's what happens on the way to their objective. So they have 5 of those in the Shire Adventures book, and then in Tales of Eriador, they have 5 or 6 more, and those ones are specifically set in Eriador. They're a little bit higher level than the ones from the Shire, but again, it provides you all you need to know about your objective, how the players are brought in, who the enemies are, different stat blocks that you'll fight against, skill checks associated with it, all of that stuff. So those ones have the fully written, like, campaign style information in them. These settings books have, they're more plot hooks, suggestion kinds of things. It doesn't have, everything set out nice and neat for you. You do have to do a little bit of work to make this fit with your campaign and bring your characters into it and decide, exactly how you want to present this to your players. But it does have the main story beats, the important, I guess, events of the plot to be aware of if you want to translate this into your campaign. Make sense? All right. So, Sauron sends 3 of the Nazgul to reoccupy Dol Guldur. They complete the subjugation of Morlhos and the training of Zagrak. Then we have in 2965. So this is the year that most of your campaigns in this book are supposed to be set in, is 2965. Morlhos departs from Dol Guldur and begins haunting the Misty Mountains. Travelers crossing Cadaras and the High Pass are plagued by landslides and snowslides, unseasonable storms, and unusually aggressive wild beasts, as well as terrifying visions and nightmares. Rumors begin to circulate about a dark whisper carried on the wind in these lands. It kind of reminds me of when Gandalf's like, oh, there's a foul voice on the air. Creepy. All right, 2 years later, 2967, Rage of the Stone Giants. In the northern Misty Mountains, snowstorms collide with the unusual activity of stone giants, who are seen hurling rocks, blocking paths, and laying waste to everything in their path. See the Winter Horn in page 103. Thank you for the follow, Lord Him 18. I appreciate it. Player heroes spending time in Rivendell are asked to inquire about these unsettling events, especially if their patron is Elrond or Gilrain. So Winterhorn, that's got to be, let's see, 103. What page am I on? 64. 103. Let's take a peek. Okay, so this is another... this is actually a location, the Winterhorn. So we've got a bunch of locations with some information in here that we can take a peek at if we were running this adventure, for example. All right, 2968, The Rise of the Elf Hunter. Zagruk strengthens his alliance with Vorog, helping him in hunting elves traveling west and ambushing other wanderers. Captured elves are delivered to Zagruk, where they endure torment and interrogation by Morlhos, who is relentlessly seeking information about Pheloth. Guy just can't let it go. Only one more follower to meet your goal. Hooray! Thank you for highlighting that, Mark Song. I actually don't have it in front of me, but yay! I really appreciate all the follows, everyone. All right, 2970, The Howling of Wolves. Vorog forms an alliance with several packs of wild wolves, while Zagruk summons evil spirits to inhabit their bodies. Ooh, possessed wolves? That sounds cool. That sounds really cool. As a result, this winter, Holland becomes infested with wolves that attack travelers and occasionally cross the Glanduin and the Brunnen. That's cool. That's cool. So you just have a bunch of evil wolves. That's neat. I kind of want to like make a stat block with that now. Like you have a wolf, but there's like wispy stuff coming off of them, and they have like special powers. Trolls Abroad. So 2973. So this is 8 years after when your players are usually going to start their adventure. During the winter, spurred on by Morlhos, hill trolls descend from the Trollshaws, plaguing the East Road and the lowlands of Rudar. They even cross into the Angle, haunting the surroundings of Rivendell. The same dark whisper that was felt in the mountains years before now resonates throughout the region, stirring spirits and awakening evil creatures. Oh, that's cool. I just love the idea of... let's say your players are crossing from Rivendell down into that, through the Angle, that kind of territory. And if they try to go back up into this area, maybe a couple years later, the change that they see exhibited in the region, that's cool. As a player, I love when I get to see the world changing around us. Like it's not just stagnant and oh yeah, it's the same place, same. To be able to see like, oh, this used to be, bountiful farmlands, children used to play on the streets, to there's suspicion and fear in the eyes of all the locals. The crops are dying, and no one leaves their house after night, and people lock their doors, and that kind of stuff. That's just cool to me. 2975, Attack on Whitethorn Hay. Arlo Fireblaze is convinced by Morlhos that the golden ring he seeks is hidden at Whitethorn Hay. He launches an attack on the farm while elf wanderers are staying there, taking them captive. And then we have another note about the location Whitethorn Hay on page 126 of this supplement. 2977, attack on Dwarf Fairy. The fame of Vorog, the elf hunter, spreads through the misty mountains, attracting numerous orcs and wargs to his cause. In a daring raid aimed at boosting his reputation, he leads a force against Dwarf Fairy. See the runes of Dwarf Fairy on page 111, intending to slaughter all the elf wardens, hacking down the trees and creating a fire so large that it would be visible from Lorien. That's cool. So, runes of Dwarf Fairy, that's on page 111. Let's just take a peek at that. Okay, so this is where the fire would be. Very cool. So this is the northern fences of Lothlorien are located about 15 miles to the south. So this is north of Lorien, but 15 miles. That's quite a distance, and they can see the fire from Lorien. That's cool. I mean, it's not cool for the elves, but it's cool as a plot device. All right. 2978, the Robbers of the Birchwood. Arlo Fireblaze discovers and takes control of an elven refuge in eastern Eriador, known as the Hill of the Dancing Birches. He and his men use this stronghold to ambush elves traveling to the Grey Havens, still bent on finding the Golden Ring. From their new base, the robbers establish connections with the Orcs of Vorog, delivering prisoners in exchange for protection. 2978, so same year, The Shadows of the Dark Whisper. The wise recognize the singular evil will is behind the attacks on traveling elves to the east and west of the mountains. The company's patron summons the player heroes, asking them to investigate the nature of Moralhaus, the Dark Whisper, and his chief agents, Vorog the Elf Hunter and Arlo Fireblaze. Around this time, those hearing the Dark Whisper may hear the name of Pheloth, spoken with a longing that borders on obsession. That's really scary. That's really cool to show this, this kind of an alternative to a love story. It's not just, oh, they were lovers and then they death parted them and he can't let go of his long lost love. Like there was, like it we read with Phelos entry there. There was a little bit of obsession on his part. 2979, so a year after. The war cries of wolves and goblins. In spring, warg riders plague the Fortalf and advance to the borders of Lorien. They retake Dwarf Fairy and block all routes north and west of the Golden Wood. By autumn, they retreat back into the mountains. 2980, Prisoner of Moralhaus. As all links to Rivendell and Lindon are severed, Celeborn and Galadriel send an envoy named Dorlas across Cadaras in winter, hoping to evade the Orcs' watch. However, he is ambushed by Vorog on the pass and captured. The elf is brought before Zagruk and Moralhaus, where he is tortured into revealing that Pheloth still lives in Lorien. If rescued or otherwise encountered, Dorlas reveals that Moralhaus is indeed the unhoused and corrupt spirit of the wood elf Nindorn. Cool. That's really cool. So that's how you reveal the information, because the players might. So the cool thing about Lorien is you can see. We read it earlier in one of my previous streams a week or two ago. We read that in Lorien you can see visions of stuff that has occurred in Lorien in the past. even if you weren't there for them. Like you basically see visions and traces of memories in Lorien. So you could theoretically have the players, when they're in Lorien, see maybe a young Pheloth and Nindorn playing out, and maybe as the players make their way around Lorien, they see like little glimpses of these visions. Times when Pheloth maybe returned his affections, when she started to show her doubts, and when she started to turn away from him. That would be cool to bring a little bit of intrigue to that. And then the players don't even make the connection between Moralhaus and his elf, who he was in his life, until this point when their envoy, when Celeborn and Galadriel's envoy gets captured. 2982, Pheloth's Last Road. Following Dorlos's capture, the orcs' activities subside, making passage across the mountains seem safe. A large company of elves from Lorien, longing to depart, bands together against the advice of the Lord and Lady of Lorien and sets out for the sea. Pheloth is among them. Upon learning of this, Moralhaus rallies his minions and takes control of Zagruk's body to lead them into battle against the elves. Dorlos the Messenger. So this is another just basic stat block for your roles here. Dorlos is an emissary of Lothlorien, entrusted to carry messages to Rivendell or Mirkwood on behalf of the Lord and Lady. He is tall, well-spoken, and more wary than most of elves. 1 second here, I need to mark my baby awake. And more wary than most elves. A friend of Nindorn, he was aware of his affection for Pheloth and the events that unfolded. Oh, from a forceful kiss to Nindorn's reckless dive, which he hoped would regain her attention. Dorlos had advised his friend against such unrestrained passion. When he saw Nindorn's lifeless body and perceived his spirit, he was filled with dismay, uttering, "Go. Go now to Mandos and do not return." If the company does not include any elves, consider having Dorlos cross paths with them early in the story. His ability to see the unseen can aid the group significantly, and he can open the borders of Lorien to them. So he's a messenger, described as compassionate and wary, int of 10, wisdom of 15, and charisma of 14. Speaks Sindarin and Western, passive perception of 14, and he's got +4 in insight, perception, persuasion, and travel. Very cool. I don't know. I really like this this plot hook. I think that there's a lot you can do with it as a lore master, and I think that it could be very engaging, especially for your elf characters, particularly if your party is wanting to go to Lorien. I don't think, maybe if they were in Rivendell, some of the stuff that is occurring in the passes and stuff occurring in the angle and that kind of stuff could reach their ears. But until they get to Lothlorien, that's when they really see everything start to unfold. Very cool. All right. So that is our first of 3 plot hooks. The next time I stream, we will be going to our second of Sauron's ploys, Memories of Ancient Wounds. This will include the Weasel Lady that we discussed a little bit at the beginning in Chapter 1, called Cothlin. So we will jump into this next time I stream. I might have to take tomorrow off from streaming. I just need to reevaluate if I need to make a trip to the city for diapers and groceries and that kind of stuff. But if you guys liked this, please follow me on Twitch or YouTube, subscribe, like, share, tell your friends, tell your Lord of the Rings buddies. I'm also on Blue Sky, so I will post there regarding any upcoming streams or cancellations to streams. As always, thank you everyone for joining me today. I really appreciate everyone's support. And I hope you guys have a wonderful Tuesday afternoon. Diapers and groceries take priority. Yeah, no, exactly. Mark Song. I need to evaluate my diaper supply here. We're doing some getting close to a point where I need to make a trip to the city at some point, and it's about 2.5 hours away. So it's a full day adventure if I need to go to the city. Thank you for the stream. Bye for now. Thank you for stopping in. I appreciate it. All right, everyone. Take care and have yourself a wonderful rest of your week.